Today, let's talk about something a lot of religious people say. Actually, said a lot. Let's say something like, God answered me. I want to be clear from the beginning. I'm not saying you didn't feel something. I'm not saying your experience wasn't emotional. I'm not even saying that you're even lying. I'm saying that we need to slow down and ask a better question. Did God really answer? Or did you take silence, emotion, timing, coincidence, or an outcome and give it a religious meaning after the fact? Because those are not the same thing, if you ask me. And that is where a lot of people tend to usually get in their feelings. And it's usually because they think questioning the interpretation means I'm attacking the experience. But let's be honest, I'm not. The feeling can be real. The tears can be real. The peace, the anxiety, the relief. The timing can feel powerful. But the conclusion still has to be questioned, if you ask me. Because feeling something deeply doesn't automatically tell you where it came from. And when I was a Christian, I knew how this worked. If I prayed for something and it happened, I said, hey, God said yes to my prayer. And if I prayed for something and it didn't happen, I said, I guess God said no. And if I prayed for something and nothing changed at all, then I said, well, God said be patient or wait, And if the whole thing made no sense, when I prayed, I said, God works in mysterious ways, I guess. I'm saying that to say this. I always gave God the credit. God got credit for everything. The yes, the no, wait, silence, confusion, delay, disappointment, success, hell, and even failure. And all of it somehow became an answer from God to me. But at some point, I just had to be honest. If every possible outcome counts as God answering, then why would I ever know if God didn't answer? And see, once I started thinking like that, that's what became the problem. Because see, a claim that works no matter what happens is not really being tested. It's being protected, if you ask me. And a lot of religious claims survive because people never let them face the possibility of ever being wrong. Think about it. Someone prays for a job. Oh, they get the job. They say, oh, God opened the door for me. Someone prays for a job. They don't get the job. They'll say something like, well, God is making me wait. God closed the door. Where is the part where we actually know God did something, though? Because from the outside, all we can see is just normal life happening. Would you agree? People get jobs. People lose opportunities. People wait. They get ignored. I don't even believe in luck, but some people get lucky. People get rejected. People get accepted. Those things happen to believers, atheists, Muslims, Christians, Hindus, Jews, everybody. So when the same life outcomes happen to everyone, why are we calling it God only when it happens inside of your religious story? See, to me, that is not evidence. That's your personal interpretation. And there's a difference between an event happening and a God actually being responsible for it. The event is what happened. The God part is what I think you add to it. Now, somebody might say, well, CJ, but I felt peace after I prayed. Okay. I believe you felt peace, but peace don't prove God answer the question. I mean, your prayers. Peace proves your body and mind responded to a prayer. Prayer can calm people down. I mean, there's other things that can help people calm down. Meditation, music, walk, talking to a friend, crying in your car, Finally making a decision can even calm people down, Your nervous system can shift without a supernatural being speaking from heaven. So when someone says, I prayed and then I felt peace, my response is just really simple. I mean, I believe you felt peace. I just don't believe you have proven the source of that peace. And that's the part people skip a lot. They jump from I felt something to God did it. Bro, but there are some steps missing in between. I mean, how can you rule out your own mind? How can you rule out emotional release? How can you rule out confirmation bias, people? I mean, what about coincidence? I mean, how do you rule out the fact that you already wanted a certain answer? How did you rule out teachings you were raised with, shaping how you understand the moment? Because most people don't investigate the feeling. They inherit the meaning. They were taught what to call it, really. Especially in church. If you feel peace, it's the Holy Spirit. If you feel guilt, then it's conviction. If you feel fear, it's the fear of the Lord or fear of God. If you feel excited, it's confirmation. I've even seen people feel confusion and then it's spiritual warfare. If you feel nothing, God is testing you. You see how that works though? The religion seems to give every emotion a label. Then the person thinks the label came from reality, but a label is not proof. You can name a feeling whatever you want. That doesn't mean the name is accurate. A person in another religion can pray to a different God and feel the same peace. A Muslim can pray and feel peace. Hinduists, Buddhist, Christians. A person with no religion can sit in silence, breathe deeply, and feel peace. So, I mean, all these people can feel peace without being different things. Peace cannot be proof that one specific religion is true. To me, it proves that humans can have powerful internal experiences. That's it. I know some people don't like that because it makes the experience sound less special. But I don't think that matters. I mean, I think it makes a less meaningful if you get what I'm saying. It just makes you human. And human experiences are powerful, but powerful doesn't mean supernatural, y'all. Meaning does not mean divine, and personal does not mean proven. This is where I think we need honesty. A lot of people say God answered them, but when they explain the answer, it usually sounds like a interpreted life through their belief system. They prayed, they waited, something happened. Then they connect the dots. Okay. But connecting dots is not the same as proving the dots were placed by God, y'all. The human mind is good at finding patterns. That's how we survive. We look for meaning. We look for signs. We look for reasons. But that same ability can also fool us. You can see a pattern and still be wrong about what caused it. You can feel something was meant to happen, but it could still be wrong. You can have perfect timing and still not have divine intervention. I think you can experience coincidence and call it confirmation. This is why skepticism matters so much, in my opinion. And it's not because it's bitterness or rebellion or anything like that. It's the fact that skepticism is asking, how do we know? That's it. How do we know God answered? How do we know it wasn't your own thoughts? How do we know it wasn't chance? How do we know it wasn't emotional relief? Like, how do we know it wasn't you assigning meaning after the outcome? And if the answer is, I just know, then that may be enough for you personally, but it is not evidence for everyone else, and it definitely is not evidence for me. I just know has started every religion on earth, in my opinion. I just know can defend Christianity. I just know can defend Islam. I just know can defend astrology, spirits, and even conspiracy theories. So if the method can lead people to different conclusions, the method is not reliable, people. And that is the part that you guys are missing. The issue is not whether you are sincere. The issue is whether the method can separate what is true from what only feels true. Because sincerity does not protect anyone from being wrong, if you ask me. People are sincerely wrong every day. And I say that as someone who used to believe. I know what it feels like to pray and think God is moving. I know what it feels like to look at a random moment and say, oh, won't he do it? That was God. I know what it feels like to hear a sermon that lines up with a situation, especially your personal situation, and then think, God is speaking directly to me. But then, y'all, I had to ask myself something. And I had to ask myself something very uncomfortable. How many people in different religions are saying the exact same thing? They all feel spoken to. They all feel led. They all feel guided, warned, and chosen and confirmed. But they disagree with each other? So either God has given a contradictory message to everyone, or humans are really good at interpreting their own thoughts as divine communication. And honestly, the second one makes most sense, if you ask me. Because we already know humans do that. We already know people interpret dreams. We already know people see signs. We already know people hear what they want. We already know people search for meaning when they are scared, afraid, grieving, desperate, and definitely uncertain. Now, let me be real. Let's be real. Prayer is often done during uncertainty. And I know some people will say that's not true, but most people prayer is done during uncertainty. People pray when they don't know what to do. People pray when they are scared. People pray when they need help. They pray when life feels out of control. So when something finally happens, the mind wants to believe the prayer is what caused it, because that feels better than admitting life is unpredictable. It feels better to say God had a plan than to say sometimes things happen and I don't know why. It feels better to say God closed that door than to say I didn't get picked. It feels better to say God is testing me than to say I'm suffering and I don't understand it. See, religion gives people a story, and sometimes that story brings comfort. But comfort and truth are not the same thing. I say that all the time on this podcast. A comforting explanation can still be wrong, y'all. A painful truth can still be true. So when I hear someone say, God answer me, I don't immediately accept that. I ask, what exactly happened? Did you hear a voice? Did something talk? Did you hear like an audible voice? Did you receive clear information you could have not known? Was there something specific, testable, or independently verifiable when this happened? Or did you feel something and interpret it through your belief? Because most of the time, it's the second one. They didn't get an answer, they got an outcome. Then they turned the outcome into a message. And silence is the easiest thing to manipulate, because silence can mean whether you need it to, it can mean whatever you need it to mean. If you want to stay, silence means stay. If you want to leave, silence means leave. If you want to wait, silence means wait. If you want to move on, silence means God released you. That's why silence is dangerous when people treat it like a voice, because silence doesn't correct you. Silence does not clarify. Silence does not say, no, you misunderstood me. You can put any meaning on silence, and essentially you can call it God. I know some of y'all don't like that, but that is why people make terrible decisions and say they were led by God. People have married the wrong person and said God told them. People have stayed in harmful situations and said God told them. People have rejected medicine and said God told them. People have cut off family members and said God told them to do that. People have started churches and cults and movements and even wars saying God told them. And when the outcome is bad, they still find a way to protect the claim. They say, maybe I misunderstood it, CJ. They'll say something like, maybe God was just testing me, CJ. Or they'll say something like, maybe the enemy interfered. You know how that Satan is. You know how the devil is, CJ. Or then they'll say, maybe it was not my season. Again, there's always an escape route, right? But if God gets credit when it worked and humans get blamed when it fails, that's not being honest. That's like special pleading. God gets protected from failure when people carry the cost of being wrong. Y'all don't think that matters? I'll tell you why it matters. This is not just a harmless belief. When people think silence is God, they stop asking better questions. They stop checking their own motives. They stop looking at evidence. They stop taking responsibility for their own decisions. They wait for signs instead of thinking clearly. They call anxiety like discernment, and they'll call desire confirmation, or call fear wisdom, or they'll even smuggle in and say, oh, a coincidence. Oh, that was a miracle. And then they wonder why skeptics are not impressed. We're not impressed because the claim is doing too much with too little. A feeling became a message. A delay became a plan. A coincidence became proof. A closed door became divine direction. A normal life event became a supernatural evidence. And when we ask for verification, people act like we attack God. No. We ask, how do you know? That's the question religious people should be brave enough to answer. How do you know? Not how did it feel? Not how meaningful was it? Not how much did it comfort you? How do you know God really answered you? Because if the answer can't be separated from your interpretation, then we need to be honest and call it what it is. It's your interpretation, and that's fine. You can say this is my personal understanding, especially in the moment. You can say this gave me comfort. You can say this helped make sense of what happened. But all I ask is don't turn around and present that as evidence that God spoke. That's the difference here, y'all, between this means something to me and this proved God answered me. One is a personal meaning. The other is a claim about reality. Claims about reality need evidence. That is the standard. Not because I hate God, not because I'm angry or I'm lost. It's just simply because truth matters. And if something is true, it should not need emotional pressure to protect it. It should not need fear. It shouldn't need guilt. It should not need people saying you just have to believe. If God answered and then show how you know. If God answered, show how you know. If God spoke, then show the difference between God's voice and your own thoughts. If God moved, then show the difference between divine action and normal probability. If God confirmed it, then show why people in other religions get the same kind of confirmation from opposite beliefs. That is where the conversation needs to go, because until then, God answered me usually means I had an experience and my belief system told me what to call it. That's why I was looking like that at first, because I really didn't want to say that, but I tried to put it as nice as I could, because I'm not denying the experience. I'm questioning the label, y'all. I'm questioning the leap. I'm questioning the confidence, because a person can be confident and still be mistaken, y'all. A person can be sincere and still be wrong. A person can feel peace and still have no evidence. I've seen this. A person can pray and still be talking to themselves. I know that sounds uncomfortable, but I'm sorry. Honesty is uncomfortable, especially when we have trained to call every bit of silence sacred, at some point, look, let me say this. At some point, I had to admit something to myself. When I said God answered me, most of the time I was interpreting. I was taking life and filtering it through Christianity. And I was giving meaning to silence. I was calling my own thoughts God's voice. I was calling emotional relief the Holy Spirit. I was calling coincidence confirmation. And once I saw that, I couldn't unsee it. Because the same method I used to prove Christianity could be used by someone else to prove a completely different religion. And if my method could prove everything, then it proved nothing. That's the point. If silence can mean yes, no, wait, or mystery, then silence is not an answer. It is a blank space you filled in. And maybe that blank space helped you. Maybe it gave you comfort. Maybe it helped you survive a hard moment. I'm not taking that from you. But comfort ain't confirmation. And meaning ain't evidence. And silence is not a voice. So the next time somebody says, God answer me, ask them this with calmness. What happened? How do you know it was God? Could another explanation fit the same event? Would you accept the same reasoning from another religion? And if every possible outcome can still be called God's answer, then what would count as God not answering? Because now the question exposes the whole thing. If there is no possible outcome where we would say God did not answer, then you're not following the evidence. You're simply protecting belief. And that is the difference between faith and truth seeking. Faith often gives people an answer before the evidence even comes in. And skepticism asks whether the answer deserves to be believed. And for me, that matters. Because I'm not trying to believe what feels best. I'm trying to believe what is likely true, most likely true. So no, I'm not saying you didn't feel special. I'm not saying your pain wasn't real. I'm not saying your peace wasn't real. I'm saying the conclusion needs evidence, because this is why I say the conclusion needs evidence. When silence can mean anything you need it to mean, then the silence didn't answer you. You answered for it. Sorry to put it that way. And remember, no fear, no dogma, just clarity. It's your boy CJ Everson. Thanks for watching The Jewish Skeptic. Catch you next time.
Do you know what I found? The more you know, the less you know.